Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Music Man podcast. I'm Joe with my other co host, Ken, from Chicago. I'm from Nashville. And we're going to talk about a topic that's a little bit dear to both of us, but especially me for living out in Nashville the last over a decade. And we're going to talk about Nashville, overrated.
Ooh.
And is it or isn't it? And I'm not going to speak for Ken on this, but for me personally, I just want anybody listening, like, this is purely our opinions.
Yes.
And you do not have to agree with it. And that's totally okay. It's just our experience with what we've dealt with in Nashville when doing stuff. Do you want to tell a little bit of a backstory, Ken, of like how we came up with this episode real quick?
Yeah, sure. I personally, we are musicians. We're always looking for opportunities to share our music, right? And what I know, which is a very limited amount, I know what Nashville is in regards to what the cultural lexicon says about it, what the city is, the town is, the history, the historical significance, and that it is Music City. Okay, what did that say to me? Well, we can get into that later. But what brought us to this subject matter is Joey and I, we decided we were going to try and play some open mics down there in good old Nashville. And the goal was to just play as many as we could locate within the time frame that I could be in Nashville. So we tried for a Tuesday night and a Thursday night. And boy, oh boy, was it an interesting experience, I'll tell you.
Well, we also, though, tried to do like we looked up Monday night, we looked up Wednesday nights. So go ahead. I didn't mean to, but
Oh, no, jump. Come on. It's, yeah, we tried multiple nights, multiple occasions, multiple locations. And it was quite an eye-opening experience at least from our perspective and our experience with Nashville. It was rather disappointing, truthfully speaking. We both, right, like you sent me a list of at least 12 to 15 venues. Did you just Google search those?
there was a Google search, but it was also done with like specific websites that geared towards musicians around Nashville. So like
Got it.
Facebook message boards, like stuff like that, where it was like geared for actual Nashville musicians.
Got it. Yeah, so you sent this list of places that supposedly have or host an open mic on any given night. And the first, I would say, I don't know how it went for you, but first red flag that I got was when I looked at this list that you sent me and I started to try and contact these places. And the first thing I did was go to their websites. And their website information was rather misleading, or the information was wrong or out of date. And ultimately, like later on in this podcast, we'll talk about just exactly what happened when we finally got a hold of someone or got a hold of any information that was current.
Yeah.
And out of all those places that we looked into, I think it was we we essentially managed to find and land in one open mic. All of the other situations that we thought were going to pan out, by the time I had gotten to Nashville, those avenues were just completely blown up in the water, or just didn't exist. And in hindsight, it is probably the most comical experience I've had in a long time. Just just by, juxtaposed with what my perception, my personal perception of what Music City is supposed to be, and what Music City was for us in our small little tiny experience that we tried to have. And it's a little bit surprising. I remember going, uh, um, I remember talking to you about Music City in Nashville, and I know I had the stars in my eyes of like, wow, this must be great for you, Joey. Like, this is where you musicians can come to just skyrocket off into a great career, and they meet people and know people and grow and become essentially what they want to be for the rest of their lives: musicians, artists, creatives, songwriters. And you were there. And in my mind, wow, it must be fantastic for Joey. He's playing all the time, he's meeting all kinds of people, he's gotten into different segments of the music social structure down there. He's living what supposedly is what you do. You're a musician, songwriter. I'm going to Nashville and I'm going to make it. Like, Joey's there. And I remember asking you, like, well, how is it? Like, is it amazing? Did you meet all these people? What's going on? Are you rich? you know? And I was getting a lot of answers, and please share. I'll pass the football to you. I was getting many, many perspectives from you that are quite contrary to what I think the mythology of what Nashville is.
Yeah.
And like, what did you tell me?
So again, this is just my personal experience, so I don't want people
Oh,
being
yeah.
like, "Oh, that's
Opinion.
bullshit. I've had a different one." Right. Um it's so you and I have touched on, like, you've been doing open mics in Chicago, and when I lived there with you, my old band that I was in, we would do open mics like 2 times a week sometimes. But this was
Hmm.
during college, so this was 2 decades ago. But they were there, and like you would just show up to an open mic and you'd play it, and it wasn't just a room full of musicians. It was like patrons were there and they'd show up. And you've been doing that in Chicago the last, what, like 4 or 5 months? Like, you've been doing regular open mics.
Yeah. Uh,
Okay.
po- yes.
Yeah. And so the reason I'm bringing that up is, like, we've taught, which we obviously want to touch on this a little bit, but like music scenes in general, and like how they build themselves up and how they get there. And when you first asked me, like, oh man, it's got to be like awesome out there, so much stuff to do, and it's like, eh, like, there is music out here. There's a lot of music stuff out here, but like, take Broadway for example, strictly cover music, and this whole situation with Broadway, which I told you about. I was working with a singer songwriter. This was probably like 8 years ago, 7, 8 years ago. And he needed a drummer to fill in. And I was like, yeah, and I worked with him at the time. So it wasn't like he was making tons of money or anything. Like, he's from here, he was born and raised here. And he was griping about, like, and he wasn't meaning it towards me, but he was like, oh, all these people coming in and like taking over and doing all this stuff. It's a saturated market, extremely saturated. There are amazing players out here, but for every one amazing player, there's 10 others waiting in the wings to get their chance. So he was playing Broadway as a side gig, and it was basically like you called into a number It was some guy that booked most of the venues on the strip. I think he probably booked like 3 or 4 of the different venues that are on the strip. So he wasn't all of them, but it was predominantly like the bigger names. You had to call in at 6 in the morning. And this is like, I never did it, but he was telling me the story of this. And he was like, you have to call at like 6 in the morning. And at that point, everybody's bombarding him to get on to the Broadway circuit. So that day, you're not guaranteed to have like a steady gig or anything. It's just like that day you see if you're potentially playing anywhere on Broadway. And it's not like there's still nepotism involved where like if you're a newbie, they're going to kind of give you the shitty shifts versus like the better evening shifts.
Yeah.
So anyway, he would call and he would get shifts for it, but most of the time it was booked up. So we'd only be playing certain days where it was like, and you'd be playing just acoustically in like an up top bar at like 11 a.m. in the morning. So it was like he got up at 6 and he was just going to be playing an hour set at 11 to 12. Those types of shows only paid really like $20. And then it was any tips you made off the like people coming up and tipping you during the lunch hour. It wasn't a lot. There wasn't people coming up constantly tipping him. He did occasionally get the evening shifts. And with those shifts, it was $40 per player. And then they would get whatever tips they all got. They split for their 3-hour set or whatever. And you would rotate out who played what hours or whatever. So like they would have a drummer from like 7 to 10. And then the next drummer would come in from 10 to 1 o'clock or something. You had to know 400 at least cover songs. I remember him telling me that you had, and if you didn't, you had to be able to like
wow.
figure it out for $40 a shift. Granted, if you want bragging rights and shit, go for it, but go ahead.
Okay, so just real quick. So $40 when? What was how many years ago was that?
Yeah, that was 7 or 8 years ago.
Okay. So your listeners can put that into context.
Yes.
That $40 a night for just you. Were tips split?
Tips were split amongst everybody whoever was in the band participating. Usually there was like a 5-piece or 6-piece. They'll have like bass, drums, guitar, lead guitar at least. I think they might have like a rhythm with a singer and then like another full singer or something like that. And maybe a keyboardist. So you're splitting tips amongst like potentially 4 to 6, 7 people. So it's like, and if somebody throws a tip in the jar, no matter what they request, you're playing it. Like
wow.
That's like, again, this was 7, 8 years ago. I don't know. Ever since they started bringing the pedal tavern shit, could have changed because a lot of stuff down in that area changed, and I don't go down there that often.
Yeah.
If ever. So that's just one side of Nashville that like people don't understand with Broadway. It's like, because I have a lot of aunts and uncles and cousins and stuff like, oh man, you got to be playing out like crazy. It's like, no, I don't.
So that's kind of like a music like trap or pit or
it is
just like nothing good can come of this.
Again, you're a 20-year-old, you got your whole music career ahead of you. You want to go do that for a year, great. I don't know anybody, at least in our age range, that would look at that and be like, fuck yeah, I want to do that every night. Hit the part, like, and we love playing out in front of people. And I don't ever mind playing cover songs, but it's like, that is all you're doing. That is all you're fucking doing. And it's not even a matter of like being good at music. Like you have to be good, obviously, but there's a lot of players that just do it because they're like, well, if nobody else is going to take these shifts, I'll take them, and it's like they wind up being like, they could play the song, but it's not like they're playing like a 4/4 beat. That's nothing what the song is calling. So that's one side of the spectrum of that whole thing.
Yeah. So would you say that was where the rose color started to come off of your glasses?
Yeah, definitely. It was also, so yes, that's part of when it did come off because it was like, I don't want to do that. And the guy that I was working with was like, oh man, you should. And he was 21 at the time, 22. I was 32, 33 at the time. Penelope was 3 years old. I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, I don't have the time to put in at 6 a.m. to get a shitty shift for $40. Not my thing.
Yeah.
But so he would hire me on and do like, so he would play like some smaller venues and like some smaller little festivals. I made maybe playing for him, and I played 5, 6 shows. One show, we played Puckett's, which is a really good venue. And the only reason he got into it was because he was playing early afternoon shifts for them. And he was calling off work like when he was working with me. So he was barely making any money. And he was getting these early afternoon shifts for lunch shifts at Puckett's part of the day.
Mm.
And it wasn't enough to pay him or to like supply him for like life, you know. So they asked him, they lost somebody for that night, and they like were like, well, do you want to play it? And he's like, yeah, definitely. So he called me up and he's like, hey, can you do this last minute show with me? It's Puckett's. I'm like, fuck yeah, I'll play Puckett's. Like Puckett's is one of those places where if you and I ever come back out, like if you come back out here again, I would love to get into Puckett's because the stage it's a good stage. It's a good place.
Yeah.
Busy, crowded, a lot of people looking for good music. We had to play some cover music. Well, we had to play mostly cover music. He could only play like 1 or 2 original songs for it. But we did make like $200 that night. All tips. Purely tips. Didn't get paid for it. Purely tips for that.
So seemingly there's some opportunities out there, but
not
small
original.
And like they're not necessarily readily available all the time, kind of.
Correct. And they want predominant covers. And Puckett's is not on Broadway. Puckett's is like off into like the city more. It's not in Broadway. And that again was another red flag because it's like they're not even letting you play fucking originals. Like, what are we doing here?
Okay, so that brings me to my first point of about.
Yeah, sorry, that was long-winded.
What you're saying in regards to Nashville is, so far the expectations of musicians that come to Nashville are not to share their own art. It is to come there and be a machine or musician to just recreate, just kind of like come be a human jukebox,
kind of,
so to speak.
Some of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's so the other end of the spectrum, and I'm using this one person that I worked with because I've worked with a few people, like, I co-write a lot, try to co-write a lot out here. And there's fantastic musicians. The talent is amazing out here. It's saturated in a way.
Yeah.
But this guy I was working with, the younger guy who's now almost in his 30s, and he's still doing it and he's trying to do it, and good for him. But he's not doing it in Nashville. He's playing like Florida. He's playing like Arkansas. So he's not even really doing a lot of Nashville stuff at the moment, which should tell you something.
Yeah.
So anyway, when we were doing it and he was doing songwriting, and a lot of it, like I got to see a lot of stuff through his eyes, which was like, and especially you and I being like in Chicago as the rock musicians in some way, like we saw a different music scene in a way. This was totally different, and it was like a different animal. People coming out of the woodworks claiming they're managers, that they can help you get a publishing deal. And that's predominantly what's out here. So people come in here and they want to write the next hit song for another major artist. And that's kind of the claim to fame now, is like, well, who like wrote what for what? And that is how you get on the Bluebird, which is that famous venue. You kind of have to be a songwriter that way. You're not really like doing your own music, but nobody knows your name because, a major country star like Miranda Lambert took your song. So we know the song. We don't know who you are, and we don't care. We want to know the song. And that's another end of the spectrum. They're getting paid for that, but isn't the point of writing your music to be your music? You know?
I feel that way.
Yeah, and again, yeah, like there's might be some people who don't like, and that's okay. There's other people that co-write and do that stuff, and a lot of the co-writers I work with do that. Totally, like I know going into it that's what we're doing, but that is predominantly what happens out here. It's more about publishing and writing music for other major artists. So a lot of people go to songwriting camps, a lot of people do these things, but that's why like the live music scene to me out here is like, yeah, so it's good. I mean, it's good in terms of the musicians are good, but like
Yeah.
there's no real like substance to a live music scene. So
Okay.
anyway, that's kind of a long drawn out like situation, but to me Nashville is singer-songwriters, but they're predominantly writing for other major artists. And the only other thing I'm going to say is most new people that move here thinking they're going to do the music thing last only 6 months and then they're gone.
Yeah.
And the cost of living out here is skyrocketed since
Oh, jeez.
all like that Nashville TV show came out and everything, and Nashville became the new hotspot for the for bridesmaid parties and shit like bachelorette parties. So cost of living is just skyrocketed. So
Okay.
it's pushing people out. Even it's like churning so many people out. So anyway,
It's funny listening to what you're saying about your experience and what you've seen about Nashville. It's not a it doesn't sound like this is an open environment or a microcosm of nurturing and welcomingness in regards to like there one of my favorite musicians, Michael McDermott. He's a Chicago guy.
great musician.
Yeah, and he in his book I read a line. He spent a lot of time coming down to Memphis to record his albums in the '90s, and he had an opinion, or he had a perspective on Nashville that it sounds pretty accurate. It sounds pretty accurate to what you are saying, and McDermott was saying that Nashville is a place where it's a bunch of dogs going after the same bone. And this idea that there's going to be more bones, and I'm just extrapolating on his comment of it's like a bunch of dogs going after the same bone. It just becomes a situation of, well, there are no more bones, but the more and more dogs keep coming looking for what they think the bone is going to be.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Oh, dude, 100%. That's a great analogy to it.
In relation to our experience, I mean, I after asking you questions about what Music City was all about, and hearing what you said, and then I think I've only been there maybe four or five times now, and this time around I still had a little bit of a glint in my eye that this might be because there's so much music going on. There are so many locations for people to I assumed play. And truly, it seems as though there are. And then we got our plan together, right? We're going to try and play as many open mics as we can, because the great quality of open mics, if you've ever done them, is that they're everywhere, and they're very easy to go to and get access to, and to go ahead and get on. Like you literally just show up at the place, sign your name on a piece of paper, and you get up there and you play one or two songs. Now I will preface this though: most open mics here are 3 songs.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter, like, it doesn't matter how many people show up. It's 3 songs. So, getting to our kooky experience, I planned, okay, I've got a guitar down by you, got equipment, okay, we're all ready to go. Joey, you already had tracks of mine to sort of develop some drum and percussion parts to it, and we were going to accompany. We were going to play. What did we? I think we had 5 songs in the bag or 4
Yeah.
songs in the bag.
4 of them, yeah.
Right. Okay, so we had our parts worked out, and let's do it. Let's find some places. So you sent me that list of 12 to 15 places, and I completely and totally was far too casual in regards to the list that you sent me, because here I'm thinking, oh, okay, there's tons of them everywhere. All right, I'll just start. I could make phone calls to these places when we're driving down there, right? Well, there was a location that you shared with us, and on their website it shows that they have different kinds of showcases. They've got a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and of course Saturdays and Sundays. Okay. I contacted the website, saw on the website that, okay, you need to contact this person on Instagram because this person hosts Tuesday showcase at this venue. Okay, great. Contact the person on Instagram, and they say, we're sorry, we don't host there anymore on Tuesdays. You'll have to contact the restaurant to get more information about Tuesdays. So I did. I contacted the restaurant, called on the phone to the restaurant, and the restaurant says, no, sorry, we don't have anything on Tuesday. If you want to get more information on the showcase, contact this guy on Instagram as well. Okay. So I contact that guy, and I tell him I'm looking for a Tuesday night slot in your open mic. Well, their open mics are not necessarily open mics in the sense of the word, where there's 20 slots and people just sign up. No, open mics are like showcases for some of these places.
Yeah.
So this gentleman was telling me, he says, well, no, we don't have any openings for Tuesday, but we have openings on Monday at this time and that time and this time. And they're 30-minute showcases. Okay, well, I guess I didn't look into this soon enough, because we don't have 30 minutes of material to be playing. Well, I guess we can't do that one. We'll try and find another place on the fly by the time I get down into your neck of the woods on Tuesday or Monday. So it's Tuesday, and we still have not been able to find a location, right?
Mm-hmm.
You went back to your list, I think, and said, well, here's another place that seems pretty decent. We could check this place out. Okay, great. I checked the website. The website seems to show that there is an open mic. Okay, cool. On the website, it says contact, I think it was like Daniel or something. Call Daniel between 1 and 3 p.m. on the night that you want to perform in the open mic. So I did. Phone number doesn't go through. Maybe I got the wrong digits. Let me try again. Phone number doesn't go through. There's no phone number, no connection, nobody. Can't get a hold of anybody. Ultimately, that venue, I think you might have discovered it, or I don't know if it was you or I, but the whole establishment is shut down. And their website doesn't say anything. The website currently shows they're still operating, they're famous, all kinds of people have played there, and come on down, open mic is at 6:30. It just blows my mind. Okay, fine, it's one place. Maybe it is just one place. Well, we started to realize more and more of these locations just they're not open, or their website information is so out of date and inaccurate that we couldn't get a hold on. We couldn't figure out what the hell to do. And thankfully, you had found the one last opportunity, which was for Thursday night. And what I find,
Boy, oh boy.
uh, what I find interesting is that personally, I guess I expect a level of professional or a level of quality or professionalism out of a community that's called Music City. And ultimately, we found this place. The location is essentially in the same building as a cafe, but both websites don't differentiate where these two locations are. So initially I'm confused as to, well, where is this place to begin with? So we were in the neighborhood. I said, Joey, you know what? My wife and I were going to go check out and make sure that this place actually exists. We find it, and it does, and it's open. It's not defunct. Okay, we're going to be there. We'll see you there tonight. Okay. Open mic starts at 6:30. We get there. Scenario is such that it looks just like typical open mic scenarios that I am used to. So there's a host, people are in the room, they've got their equipment and their guitars, and okay, great, finally, we found something that's familiar to me. And we get to the place, we sit down, they announce, they say, okay, depending on how many people show up and sign up, we'll only be able to do one or two songs per performer. Okay, all right, that's fine. They inform everybody, okay, here's the sign-up sheet. I was too slow. Everybody else signed up right in the middle. Like one of the funny phenomenon of open mics is people try to get the slots right in the middle, so not like 1 or 20. They want to be like 15 right in there, because there's this idea that all these people warm the crowd up for you, and then you start, then once you get to the meat and potatoes, which is 3/4 of the way through, and then everybody's tired, so they don't want to listen to anybody afterwards, or people leave when it's later. So there's that sweet spot. Well, that whole fucking slot was filled. So I said, okay, we're going first. So I signed up for number 1. We get up there. Funny enough, we start to perform. I started doing a little bit of staccato on the guitar so that you could get your tempo set.
Yeah.
And what happened?
My kick drum broke. Or my kick pedal broke.
Like, what's going on? What's going on? Is everything okay?
Yeah, we
But
just
as
went without it then.
That's right. As a true professional, you're like, I got this. So we played, did a great job, enjoyed it. And after that first song was done, I was hoping, man. I asked the host, I says, can we do another one? Is it 1 or 2? And they say, no, sorry. I forgot to say, it's only 1 song per performer. All right, that's a little disappointing, but you know what? We got to play in Music City. This is great. This is exciting. Okay, I'm happy. Needless to say, the rest of the experience was interesting, and I won't go into detail, but the level of professionalism, not only in the venue, or the level of professionalism that I expect or perceive, like why would Music City not be this way? High level or quality, or you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
just do your job kind of professionalism. And it just wasn't.
No.
It wasn't that. And the musicians themselves, there were many of them that were very, very good. I enjoyed the songs that they did, but then you have a slew of the location seemed to be an inside soiree where they do it their way, and anyone else outside is welcome. But this is what they get. This is how we do it here, and too bad, tough. All right, I can understand that. But after all of the struggle trying to pinpoint and figure out these open mics to just like simply play and share original music, I was just taken aback by how difficult my experience was in finding places to share
Yeah.
your music. And if Nashville is so damn saturated with artists and songwriters and musicians and people, that if they are so damn saturated, I can completely and totally understand why some of these venues just don't give a damn, where they feel is like, well, who cares about professionalism? What does it matter? None of us are going to get the bone. The inside, elite community that gatekeeps in Nashville isn't letting us in. This is our corner of the world that we're going to have to make the most of, kind of thing. So what does it matter? I can completely understand that if that's just how it is with the smaller fish in Nashville.
Yeah. That's a funny thing you said there, that gatekeeping. And that's what so many musicians and artists that I like talk to around here, it's gatekeeping, because most people have connection, or not most, I'm sorry, but like the smaller portion of people have really good connections. But once you're in there, that's it. And trying to get into that little tight circle, good luck. And I don't even know if you want to be in that tight circle, because some of those people are really shitty anyway. There was a few producers, recording engineers out here that like recorded like major artists like Florida Georgia Line and stuff. And they say it like Nashville is just a watered down, they call pop country music, and it's just saturated with stuff like that, where it's just pop country crap, and you don't really get to hear the really talented individuals that are writing amazing stuff. And there's just not an opportunity. That's why most people only last 6 months, because it's like,
Yeah.
to break in is really difficult. And there's like writers rounds and stuff that are different than the like Leah was telling me about. Like, she's like, writers rounds are some of the things that people do and stuff, but that's, again, like, it's a different setup and a different situation, and there's not really a crowd there. There's not like, you're just playing for a room of other musicians, and it's kind of one of those things where it's like, is this just a circle jerk? Like, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's like,
Yeah.
like, the point of playing out isn't to play for other musicians. It's to play for just people who want to experience new music. And you don't even give that opportunity to a lot of the smaller artists that deserve that. But
Yeah, I imagine our next attempt needs to be aimed at a different like spot. Like these, it sounds as though there are showcases or singer-songwriter like groups, and maybe that's a direction that is better suited to what we are looking to do. So maybe in the future, the typical definition of an open mic is doesn't fit what we want to do. But then again, that brings you to, okay, well, would we even get noticed in the music world in a singer-songwriter showcase
right.
down in Nashville anyways, because
Right.
of the saturation of people that come there, that move there and try their hand at being, who they are.
Yeah. Well, and I, because we're coming up to 40 minutes, but you're totally right. Like that could be a totally different realm that we go into coming back to Nashville and reorganizing and figuring out we do something like that. One of my good friends I work with out here that we're doing like the metal project, he and I talk about sometimes, and it's just like there's just not a music scene. Like you and I have talked, like Chicago had an emo scene when we were growing up in our college years. Like Victory Records was pretty prominent out there, and like a lot of the emo bands were playing Metro and Double Door in Chicago, and it was starting to blow up like a real music scene. Fall Out Boy came out during that time, and huge suburban Chicago band. And then you look at like the LA 1980s with like the hair metal, like there were designated scenes for these types of music, and people wanted to see it. Grunge in Seattle, like it was prominent in that. Here it's just not a music scene to me personally. There's no camaraderie. There's no building of like each other up and like helping. You and I do solo projects, but we still promote each other in a way. We still are pushing to help each other out. Like, and that out here does not feel like it happens ever. It's just cutthroat, every individual for themselves. And I don't know, to me personally, that's a bad recipe for like a music scene. But
Yeah. I would certainly be curious to hear what our listeners have to say about this. This is totally an opinion episode,
yeah,
and we don't have all the perspectives on what life might be like as a musician or a creative person in Nashville. So I don't know if the listeners are interested in chiming in. I would love to hear what other people's experiences have been like in Nashville, and what do they think? What is, when they hear Music City, what does that mean to them? Like, I know for my friend Tim, he travels a lot for work, and every time he goes to Nashville, he has the same opinion. He says the only thing he doesn't like about Nashville is that there's constant music everywhere.
yeah,
You get off the plane and there's music in the terminal. And you're walking through the rest of the airport and there's somebody playing music in the airport. And then you get into the taxi cab and there's music playing there. You get into the hotel lobby and there's music playing in the lobby. And it's like he can't, his personal irritation is that there's no respite or rest for his ears, because it's just constant sound every time he comes to Nashville. So maybe the listeners have a better insight on what it's all about. I would love to know, because what my perceptions are totally different than what I experienced. So I'd be curious to hear when anybody has, if anybody that's interested in offering their opinion on it, we'd love to hear you.
Yeah, the comments are open on the video. Yeah, leave a comment below. That's a really good point. That open dialogue. We're open to hear what other people say. And if they have opportunity of showing like, here's a good open mic, or here's what a good idea is, please leave it for the community underneath, because
steer us the correct way, because apparently we're morons and we don't know what we're doing.
We're old men morons.
Yeah, so. Anyway.
Do you have anything else you want to add to this before we wrap it up?
No, only that I have hopes that I will have another experience in Nashville that will be good and positive, and so I'm excited to try it again, just in would take a different angle, and when that's all said and done, we'll report back to the listeners. Yeah. We'll let you know how it goes. So
yeah, we'll do a Nashville overrated part 2.
That's right.
Part
big
2.
Stamp.
Yes, part 2. Okay, well, we're going to wrap it up. It's been 45 minutes. I want to thank you. My name's Joe.
Thank you.
That's Ken. And we will see you guys in the next episode.